Welcome, my dear friends. It is great to see you. I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an enjoyer of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I perform dramatic readings of my short stories, along with those that I work with. I provide role-playing game reviews, and I get to interview interesting people. In this episode, we'll be talking about Adventure Module P1, Pirates of the Airdish Main, by Joseph Bloch, who runs the excellent YouTube channel called Greyhawk Grognard, which I highly recommend that you watch. He's very entertaining and very witty. Written in the style of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition modules, this adventure can be run using any old-school D&D style system, like Basic Dungeons & Dragons, both editions of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and old-school retro clones like Dungeon Crawl Classics, Adventures Dark and Deep, and so on. The module is designed to challenge mid-level characters, so for levels 5 through 10, but slightly lower level player characters could survive if played well and a few things were tweaked. The adventure does not specify the number of PCs this is appropriate for, but based on my reading of the encounters, the party should have around 6 PCs to be most successful. As for the intended setting of this module, it can be dragged and dropped into any world with enough water to sail a ship over. It would seamlessly fit into Gary Gygax's own original campaign setting of Greyhawk, because the writer just slightly changed a few key elements from the Greyhawk setting, called them things slightly different in order to make this module. I mean, his channel's called Greyhawk Grognard. This is the kind of thing he's very likely to do. Now let's see how this book sells itself. Reading from the cover, pirates threaten honest shipping all along the Airdish coast and across the Airdish Sea. You and your companions have been tasked with protecting a merchant vessel and its precious cargo. Can you overcome warring islands, sea monsters, pirates, and the other perils of the high seas? Now that sounds like a good time to me, and given the success of the republished Saltmarsh Adventures for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, along with the success of the Pirates of the Caribbean film franchise, a lot of people these days would probably agree with me. Now before I crack these covers and go into detail on P1, I must warn ye, there be spoilers. Spoilers dark and deep. More spoilers than you can shake a pig leg at. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. The short, sweet, and to the point introduction gives us a great preview of what's ahead for us. Introduction. This adventure charges the player characters with protecting a merchant ship against attacks from pirates, sea monsters, and other threats. The merchant ship Sea Genie is sailing from the quasi-independent city of Rel Eltheria to the free port of Dimshore on the southern tip of the Airdish Main. The Sea Genie carries a cargo of copper ingots and bolts of fine cloth. The adventure has 4 major parts, which we are going to go over one at a time. Unlike some published modules or campaigns that rely heavily on pre-scripted events to guide the adventure, P1 is written in the old school style of here's some interesting locations, the NPCs who can be found there along with their agendas, and a very basic plot thread to bind them into more than a series of random encounters. A strength of this style is that the DM does not need to railroad events to go a certain way or provide a certain NPC with plot armor to make sure they survive, because the entire thing is written with those elements in mind. They're indispensable, and it'll screw everything up if they suddenly stop being. Instead, most of the story that emerges will be unique to each playthrough, as the players will drive the dramatic developments and the story through their own individual actions. Instead, most of the story that emerges will be driven by the players and the choices they make. It's going to be their decisions that'll shape what the story winds up being, how the characters develop, how the NPCs are impacted, all through choosing which parts of the adventure they want to interact with and those that they don't. And there are no wrong options. So really, this is like a sandbox, but within certain parameters. So there's a little more guidance, but there's still all the freedom that your player characters might want. To highlight the importance of the player's actions in this module, an important component of this adventure is the party's relationship to the crew. Since the basic conceit of the module is that the PCs have hired on to protect a ship's crew and its cargo from threats, how well the crew likes and trusts the party can make a big difference in how these challenges go. For example, if the party has earned their distrust and not invested in the relationship at all through actively being jerks or just ignoring the crew, the better the chance the crew will break and run in a fight or turn on the party if given the chance. I really like this idea of placing value on the party's interactions with NPCs, and Bloch gives us a system with mechanics on how to score the relationship. It's super simple and easy, and there's even a chart provided to help measure where the party is at. It looks a lot like a reputation tracker that I'd come up with for a Keep on the Borderlands campaign I ran, where I could chart with some degree of certainty and objectivity where the players were on their rise to either heroism or infamy. Helpfully, the writer also provides several scenarios where the party can gain and lose trust, and just enough details on each crew member to make them interesting to play, but not so much as to bog down the text. Speaking of systems, Bloch also provides an alternate system for unarmed combat, since getting in barroom brawls is something sailors are likely to do. I must say I like what he did with it. It's fairly intuitive and all fits on a single page. Personally, I think the grappling rules make way more sense that he came up with as opposed to those provided in D&D 5th edition, which suck. And no, I won't elaborate, because if you read them, you'll agree with me 100% of the time. So after the PCs hire on to protect a ship called the Sea Genie for 100 gold each, the first part of the adventure suggests that the following events occur prior to the first part of the adventure. This part really focuses on that party and crew dynamic through a series of events. The party can gamble with the crew, win money, gain or lose reputation, and a fight could break out. The party can be eating with the crew in the mess hall. Somebody bumps into somebody, and a fight breaks out. See, you'll have plenty of chances to use those new unarmed combat rules. Then a storm blows in, with cruel nature using wind and sea to wreck the ship and cargo. Active players with characters dedicated to protecting the ship can really shine here. By passing a number of skill checks in key locations of the ship, the party can stave off disaster and even save lives. Trying their best and succeeding will drive up that trust score, while shirking and failing will ruin any reputation they had. I'm a fan of including this concept of man against nature in my games, so I love this encounter. A lot of people forget that nature is terrifying and will kill you without a thought. To my ancestors who got on the boat to the New World basically as soon as they found out that there was a New World, my hat's off to you, mad respect, because the sea is a murderous bathtub full of fish shit, and I don't know if I would have made the same decision to get on the boat. If you're in the Navy, there is a greater than zero chance that you're going to get blown off the deck, or your ship's going to sink, in which case you either get to drown or you get to be eaten by sharks, and you don't get to pick which one. Which is part of the reason I picked joining the Army, because if my truck, transport, or tank breaks down, I can still walk to where I need to go. The module does not suggest giving XP for surviving the squall, but I would do so, since this encounter does pose meaningful threats to the ship and the party. Part 2 takes us into port at the small, sketchy, and ramshackle seaside town of Fortunado. It is everything you could want in a pirate adventure town. Corrupt law enforcement that can ruin your day. A random encounter table featuring Karens. Taverns both for locals only, that you're not allowed to go into unless you're creative. And those spying on their patrons for the pirates operating in the area. Brothels, casinos, and a rumor table. The location descriptions are brief, but evocative, and here's one I really love. Anne's Place is a brothel which has a reputation as a run-down, squalid place with poxy girls who can barely muster any enthusiasm for their trade. This reputation is entirely well-earned. Anne, owner of the brothel, is a middle-aged madam who is herself drunk most of the time, and thus does not keep a close eye on the 4 girls and their clients. 1 silver coin will get a girl for 30 minutes. 2 such coins will get a girl and a bit of gossip. That one paragraph tells me so much about this place that I could pick up and run with it just after first reading. The party is free to explore as much or as little of the town as they want, but the more trouble they get into by snooping back at the pirates and informers snooping on them, the more danger they could encounter, but the better prepared they will be when they get back to sea, because they know someone's out to get them. Then we move on to part 3, where we get our first taste of hot ship-on-ship action, and a 3-way at that. The crew of the Sea Genie will spot 2 rival ships going at it, and at this point, a deception on board is exposed, as the captain is taken prisoner, so an agent of one of the warring factions can take the Sea Genie into the fight to support their allies. The description of the onboard intrigue, its ramifications, and the role the party can play in it is excellent, and these stakes are high. However, I found the ship battle to be lacking. We get no details of what is on the other ships, who wins if the PCs don't intervene, and key details like that. We get details on one boarding party for one ship and some general guidance on what could happen. If the PCs board another ship, either to help one side or just out of a love for violence, we have to make it up from whole cloth, unlike in Part 4, where we get ship-to-ship combat with the pirate crew of the Demon Wave. A cool name for a pirate ship if I ever saw one. Here we get a much better description of what the party is up against, significant battle plans and strategies by the pirates, and boy do they fight dirty. And again, the relationship between the crew and the party plays a key role. If the party leads a spirited defense and rallies the crew, the Demon Wave will have a hard time and may be forced to retreat, or even be captured by the PCs. If as crew and officer casualties mount, the indifference the party had for the crew comes back to haunt them. And after the crew surrenders, the party's best hope is to only be left out at sea in need of rescue. Either way it goes, that ends P1 Pirates of the Airdish Main. The party will either receive their due reward and letters assuring their reputation to future employers, or it ends in ignominious defeat. There are a couple new magic items which fit the nautical theme, but we don't get any of the promised sea monsters. Unless you count a mermaid, you're only likely to encounter if the players go heavy on the sleuthing and Fortunato. Since it was mentioned on the book's blurb though, I wanted a sea monster and didn't get one. After the helpful ship maps in the back of the book, there are 3 pages for notes and an entirely blank page, so there was room for it, as well as room to expand on the ship encounters in parts 3 and 4. The total number of pages dedicated to the adventure clocks in at 11, so there was room for more material to be added. I also wonder if the 100 gold piece reward is enough to attract the attention of a mid-level party, so players may need a more compelling reason to go. It would work for a lower level party eager to earn their fortune, and this could be made suitable for lower level player characters with only minimal adjustments. If you like art in your adventure books, inside the module you get this one ship, and that is it. That's too bad, because Music Land, which we reviewed previously on this channel, had some memorable art to go with it. Overall, even if it could have used a little more material to go into it, I really liked what P1 did. I think this is a great way to let your players experience the thrills and dangers, common in sailors' tales, and something different but very in keeping with the life of an adventurer. P1 would be a great addition to any nautical themed campaign. Worked into a Salt Marsh campaign, as a sequel to In-Fort Treasure Hunt, where the escaping party could be rescued at sea by the crew of the Sea Genie, a lead into the Isle of Dread, or as part of the Lenore Isle setting, which started with The Secret of Bone Hill. Normally I include a publication history along with interesting facts on the role-playing game modules that I review, but this is both a new adventure and from a small press, so there isn't much online for me to reference. But if you can't find where other people have reported on the facts that you want, I think it's incumbent on us to go get them ourselves. I asked the author if he wouldn't mind filling in the details for us, and lucky enough, Joseph Bloch not only likes to talk and is good at it, but he agreed to do just that. So now let's hear from the man himself. Well, my dear friends, please welcome again our old friend, Joseph Bloch, the Greyhawk Grognard. And since we were wanting to find out more about Pirates of the Airdish Main, the man himself is going to tell us about it. So thank you again, Joseph. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So I see that this adventure was put out by your publishing company, BRW Games, and I'll put links to where people can find those in the description. So Pirates of the Airdish Main, when was this first published?
This was published earlier this year. I try to do a
2023.
quarterly module. This is the first of a series that I'm doing. The next one in the series came out this month. That's the Ghost of Harvin Halfhand. I'm trying to do a pirate themed series of adventures because I've always thought that there weren't enough nautical adventures in general. Naturally, when you think of nautical adventures, pirates just come to mind. By the sheerest coincidence, when I was contemplating doing these modules, Turner Classic Movies just happened to have a pirate movie marathon, and I shotgunned them all, and got no end of inspiration. Movies like Captain Blood and all those, all those good adventure films from that era, and that really helped the old juices going.
Yeah, no, and a lot of people, they don't know about those older movies, but those things can be wildly entertaining. Like I remember it was one of those dollar DVDs I got from Walgreens or something. It was, I think, Errol Flynn and Man in the Iron Mask. I could be getting it slightly wrong, but that thing was such a rollicking adventure. Black and white, silent, didn't matter. If you watch that movie, you're going to have a good time. So that'd be a heck of a playlist that you went through to get the inspiration for this. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But like I say, there just aren't enough adventures that take place in this kind of environment. Which, if you look at most D&D settings, maybe not Dark Sun, but there's a lot of ocean,
Yeah.
and it just makes sense to have stuff that you can throw in there to get characters from point A to point B and let them have an adventure during the journey, rather than just hand waving it and saying, "Okay, you get there."
Yeah.
And that's what these are supposed to do. They're supposed to give you some ways to fill that space.
And it was a great variety of activities you gave us in this module. And I 100% agree with you. And bravo to you for doing your part to fill that gap.
Thank
Because
you.
if you want to go to like some real depressing emo demi-plane where you're terrified or something, there's like whole product lines for you for decades and decades. But if you want to go on an adventure on or under the sea, which on Earth is like 70% of the surface, maybe a dozen modules and supplements you might get out of that. So thanks for doing your part. So the P series is that pirate. Is
A
that
is
what
for
that?
pirate. Yep.
Okay. And the second one dropped in this August 2023. Okay.
Correct. That's the Ghost of Harvin Halfhand, which is kind of a redo of a module that I wasn't entirely satisfied from many years ago, and I completely revamped it and redid it, and it's a much stronger module now. And I've got it in the pipeline. I don't know when it's going to be coming out, but I do have a P3 that I'm working on, which is a whole pirate town, kind of like a fantasy Tortuga.
Oh, so it's not going to be Fortunato, the expanded edition. It's going
No,
to be a
no,
whole
no, no.
different town.
No, this is going to be very much in keeping with the others in the series. It's
Well,
going to be fun.
but I really liked Fortunato though, because your description of the gambling halls and the brothels, especially the one Anne's place with
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
poxy, sullen, drunk prostitutes, like the flavor text you gave me was amazing in that. So you were clearly inspired.
Yes.
Were there any other inspirations or ideas that you had that besides Turner Classic Movies that
Well,
motivated you here?
one thing I wanted to make sure is I always like to promote the idea of role playing and interacting with the NPCs rather than just viewing NPCs as quest givers or obstacles to be cut down. And one of the mechanisms in that module is that crew tracker,
I
right?
love that thing.
The PCs have to get on the crew's good side, and there's a number of little mini encounters, little mini events that happen while they're on the ship, and depending on how those go, you'll either the crew will either be happier with you or they will be less happy with you. And once certain events happen, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but there are certain things where you're going to want the crew on your side. And depending on how you've treated them over the course of the adventure, will determine whether or not they support you.
Now, did you come up with that system just for this module, or did you have that previously sitting around and thought, here's a
Oh,
great place to put?
that was just for this. It's
Really?
kind of sort of inspired by the idea in City of Skulls. They have a system, a notoriety system that, if you kill too many of Ayuza's minions, the number of patrols will increase and so forth. That was in the broadest sense the kind of inspiration for this, but the specific thing was just I wanted to make sure that the PCs had a reason to interact with the different crewmen. And that's why I give all the crewmen on the ship, they all have little personalities. Even if they're not fully fleshed out, there's a couple of things that you can hang your hat on and play with them. And I wanted to give the PCs not just an opportunity, but actually a mandate, a reason to do it, even if they're not consciously aware of it. Because if they just blow off the crew, they're gonna regret it later on in the module.
Yeah, they are. And I'd seen in some older editions little attempts here and there at a reputation system. And I remember that the AD&D second edition character sheets I used, they had a little spot for like honor or reputation, but I never
Yeah,
really found a very robust or a system that got followed up on. But yours is simple, easy, and I think there's a lot of applicability for this. So hopefully you include that in future modules because just like in life, people besides yourself do matter. It matters what they think about you. And I thought that was a very elegant way you captured that. And the
thank you.
crew listing, that was also elegant. It was just enough detail to take them and run, but not so much that it just killed the momentum of reading through the text. So good
Exactly.
job.
I didn't want to give the DM an encyclopedia to have to slog through.
Yeah.
And it's got a couple of highlights. It's got this person likes this person, doesn't like that. And hit points, and just that's all you really need. At
And
least if you DM like I do. I
I'm
write.
sorry.
I write for myself. I write for people who play like I do.
Well, you'll know at least one person who likes what you wrote.
Well, thank
And
you.
and if you liked it, then other people probably like it. And I love your little adventure idea shorts that you put out. So
Oh
obviously,
yeah,
I dig
the
it.
adventure hooks. In fact, one dropped about an hour and a half ago. So
Oh, good. I haven't seen that one yet. I got to check it out. Now, I do have a question about art. We don't really get much art in P1. What happened there?
for the quarterly adventures, it's harder for me to go to my artists because the volume is very small on these. They're only 15 pages long. I don't sell nearly as many of these as I do of other products like the hardcover books. So just from a financial standpoint, these don't have a budget that I can really sustain a lot of artwork for these. I try to use some public domain stuff. Like all the covers on these modules are public domain classical works. It's just a question of budget at this point, because if I started selling 10 times as many of these every quarter, you're going to see some art. Uh, that will be reflected in what you get. For example, like the other module, Musicland,
Right.
that was its own Kickstarter way back in the day. I did a
Oh.
special edition, with a separate map book and everything. So I was able to use that money to buy art for it. But for this, just because I know the numbers behind the scenes, and it would take me a long, long time to break even if I was paying an artist for even a handful of pieces of interior art.
Oh, that makes complete sense. And I appreciate the inside baseball of
Yeah.
what life's like for smaller independent publishers, because
Yeah,
I'm sure
believe me, I
some.
would love to. I would love it if I knew I was going to sell X number of each module that would allow me to do that. I would absolutely be hiring artists. It's just the economics of these particular things doesn't really make sense at this point.
Now, I tell you what, though, that ship map is handy. Did you make
Yes,
that?
I did.
Well, wow. Look at you. Good job. Good job.
Yeah, I
um,
tend to do the mapping myself. I use Worldographer, which used to be Dungeonographer,
okay.
by Inkwell Ideas. It's a nice little software package.
Hey, that's
Does what I
great.
needed to do.
It's handy. And like you said, there's a dearth of nautical adventures and material. Well, that also means ship maps. A little harder
I
to come by than a map of a cave or your bog standard dungeon. I thought it was very handy.
There's a bunch of ship maps that you can find, but they're battle mats. They're battle mats intended to be used online, and they're entirely not suitable for the sort of black and white interiors that I do, which is a pity.
Last question for you. The pirate ship, the Demon Wave. That's an awesome name, one. And two, was there a particular inspiration or did you just grab that out of the ether and
I,
run with it?
I just plucked it out of nowhere.
Because it's a nautical adventure set in Greyhawk-ish,
The
and you
world of
got the
Greyheim,
Demon
which is
Wave,
nothing at all like the world of Greyhawk.
at least as far as intellectual property rights go, right? And I was expecting Ius to show up or one of his bastard kids to be the captain or something. But no, that's a cool name. I really liked it. All right. Well, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you for taking time to let us know more about Pirates of the Airdish Main. We'll look forward to talk to you again in the future.
I would very much looking forward to it.
And there you have it. If you have played in or run P1, I would love to hear how that went for you. So please put your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review of Pirates of the Airdish Main, I too enjoy people liking and subscribing, so you know what to do. I thank you for your time and that you chose to spend it with me. And as we dear, dear friends are soon to part, I wish you nothing but the best.